On a June afternoon in 1945, a young engraver stood on the curb of Fifth Avenue with 4 million other people and caught one fleeting glimpse of a man in an open car. The man was General Dwight Eisenhower, home from the war he had just won, riding through the largest ticker tape parade New York had ever thrown. The engraver was Frank Gasparro, 35 years old, a junior man at the Philadelphia Mint, close enough to the curb to see a face go by, and no closer. He watched for a few seconds. Then he went home and drew the man from memory, in profile, the way you would draw something you intended to cut into steel, trying to hold on to what he later called courage and character. He had no reason to think anyone would ever use it. 26 years later, that drawing became the last big silver dollar Americans ever carried. This is the story of the Eisenhower dollar, the coin that honored a president, a moon landing, and, quietly, a room full of slot machines. The year that made the coin possible was 1969, and it delivered two things in 5 months. In March, Dwight Eisenhower died. In July, 2 Americans landed on the moon in a spacecraft called Eagle. That fall, a Texas congressman named Bob Casey introduced a bill proposing a single-dollar coin to honor both: the general who created NASA on one side, the mission that fulfilled it on the other. It is a genuinely beautiful idea. A man's life, and the thing his country did after he was gone, pressed onto the same piece of metal. But there was another reason the dollar came back, and it is far less romantic. By the end of the 1960s, real silver dollars had vanished from American circulation. And nowhere did that hurt more than Reno and Las Vegas. Casinos ran on silver dollars. Slot machines ate them. Gamblers expected to be paid in them, and the Treasury's supply had run dry, leaving the gaming industry buying dollar-sized tokens from private mints. The casinos wanted a real coin back, and they lobbied for it. So the most sentimental coin of the decade, a memorial to a dead president and a moon landing, moved through Congress partly because Nevada needed something to feed the slots. Both of those things are true at once. That is usually how American money gets made. Then came the fight over what it would be made of. The Mint's director, Mary Brooks, pushed hard for a real silver dollar, an actual descendant of the Morgan and the peace dollar. Congress had no interest. Silver had been stripped out of the dime and quarter years earlier, and there was no appetite for putting it back. The compromise was this: the coins that went into circulation would be copper nickel clad, the same sandwich metal in your pocket change, and a separate run of 40% silver coins would be struck for collectors and sold at a premium. Those collector coins came in 2 famous packages, the uncirculated ones in a blue envelope, the proofs in a brown box. To this day, dealers just call them blue Ikes and brown Ikes, and that compromise created the single most common disappointment in American coin collecting. Somebody finds a big heavy dollar in a parent's dresser, sees the date, and calls it a 1971 silver dollar. It almost never is. If it has no mint mark or a D, it has no silver in it at all, not 1%. Only the San Francisco collector coins carry silver, and even those are 40%, never the 90% of the old dollars. The Eisenhower dollar looks like silver, weighs like silver, and sounds like silver. It mostly isn't. That is not the collector being fooled. That is the coin being exactly what Congress designed it to be. The bill was signed on the last day of 1970, reportedly with only minutes to spare before it would have died on the calendar, and it was signed by Richard Nixon, who had served 8 years as Eisenhower's vice president. The man who spent the 1950s standing slightly behind Ike put Ike on a coin. Gasparro had his marching orders in almost no time. For the front, he pulled out the drawing he had made from memory in 1945, studied it alongside some 30 photographs, and cut the profile that had been sitting in a drawer for a quarter of a century. His initials, a small FG, sit at the base of Eisenhower's neck. The back was not his choice. The law required it to be based on the Apollo 11 mission insignia, the patch designed by astronaut Michael Collins, showing an eagle coming down on the lunar surface with the Earth hanging behind it. There is a detail in that patch worth knowing. The eagle originally came in with its talons out, and by the astronaut's own account, it looked too much like a bird of prey, too warlike for a mission meant to represent everybody. So an olive branch was moved into its claws. Peace, carried in the talons, delivered to the moon. Mint Director Brooks asked Gasparro for a peaceful eagle. He said he gave her a pleasant-looking one. He softened it further after the first Denver dies were cut, which is why collectors chase the 1971 D Friendly Eagle, an earlier, gentler bird that most people holding one have no idea they own. The first silver collector coin struck at San Francisco was set aside for Mamie Eisenhower, the president's widow, and presented to her in a blue leather case by Nixon himself. Her grandson David got the second. Nixon kept the third. A handful of specially struck presentation pieces went out of the White House that year, and decades later, collectors worked out that they were physically different from the ordinary coins. A separate, tiny population hiding in plain sight, one of which has since brought more than $30,000 at auction. A coin handed out as a party favor worth a small car. And then the Eisenhower dollar went into the world and failed almost completely. It was enormous, 38 millimeters across, the same footprint as the old silver dollars, sized for a century that had ended. It didn't fit vending machines. It wore holes in pockets. Cashiers had no drawer slot for it. A Treasury study in 1976 found something close to a total attrition rate. Essentially, every Eisenhower dollar that entered circulation came back out after a single transaction. People spent it once, and whoever received it took it home. Hundreds of millions were struck. As money, it barely existed. Outside of Nevada, where the casinos finally got their slot dollars, the Ike was a novelty that Americans stuck in a jar. There is a sad footnote to the silver coins, too. By law, the premium from selling those blue and brown packages was directed to Eisenhower College, a small school in Seneca Falls, New York, founded in the president's honor. The program sent it something like $9 million. The college closed anyway in 1983. Even the coin's charity didn't survive it. The dollar did get one genuine moment of glory. For the bicentennial, the Treasury ran the first open coin design competition since 1938. 884 entries, 3 winners, $5,000 each. The dollar went to Dennis R. Williams, a 22-year-old sculpture student at the Columbus College of Art and Design in Ohio, making him the youngest person ever to design a United States coin. His idea was simple and perfect. The Liberty Bell, superimposed over the moon. 1776 laid directly over 1969. Every one of those coins is dual-dated 1776-1976, which is why there is no such thing as a 1975 Eisenhower dollar. The mint struck the bicentennial date for 2 solid years. Williams' original lettering was thick and blocky. Gasparro refined it partway through production into something thinner and sharper. Collectors call them Type 1 and Type 2, and telling them apart is one of the easiest first lessons in variety collecting there is. The Ike ended in 1978. Its replacement, the Susan B. Anthony dollar, arrived the next year, designed in a final twist by Frank Gasparro. The government had learned that the dollar was too big, so this time they made it small. Americans promptly confused it with a quarter, and it failed faster and harder than the coin it replaced. The same hands made both. One was too heavy to carry, the other too easy to lose. So look again at what that big disc actually holds. A man glimpsed for 4 seconds from a curb in 1945, drawn from memory by someone who had no idea why he was doing it. A general who spent his last speech as president warning Americans about the military-industrial complex, memorialized on the back by a space program born out of missile competition. An eagle carrying peace in its claws onto the surface of the moon. A dollar pushed through Congress by grief and by slot machines. A Liberty Bell drawn by a college kid. And a coin that America never really spent, because almost every one of them, after a single trip through somebody's hand, was carried home and put in a drawer. 50 years on, as the country turns 250 and reaches for its dual dates all over again, that is the Eisenhower dollar. Not a failure of a coin, but a nation's last big, heavy, sentimental attempt to hand every citizen the same good day to keep.